Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided his salvage ship through the twisted metal graveyard that floated in space. The debris field stretched for miles in every direction, filled with the broken remains of ships from wars fought long before humans ever left Earth. His ship, the Copper Dawn, moved slowly between the larger pieces of wreckage, its sensors scanning for anything valuable. "Come on, give me something good today," Jake muttered to himself as he watched the scanner display. He had been working this sector for 3 weeks now and had found mostly scrap metal and worthless junk. The Titan Salvage Corporation paid him by what he found, and his bank account was getting dangerously low. The scanner beeped softly, showing a faint energy reading from something ahead. Jake leaned forward in his pilot seat, squinting at the display. Most of the wrecks out here were completely dead, their power sources drained or destroyed centuries ago. Finding something still active was rare and usually meant it was worth real money. He pushed the throttle forward and steered toward the signal. As he got closer, he could see it was not a ship at all. It looked like a satellite, but unlike any design he had ever seen. The structure was made of some kind of crystal that seemed to glow with its own inner light. It was beautiful in a way. That made Jake forget he was supposed to be looking for profit. The satellite was about the size of a small house, with crystalline spikes jutting out in all directions. The energy reading was coming from somewhere inside it. Jake checked his scanner again and frowned. The power signature was definitely artificial, but it was getting weaker by the minute. Jake put on his spacesuit and prepared to board the strange satellite. The docking clamps on his ship barely managed to attach to the crystal surface, but they held. He cycled through the airlock and stepped onto the satellite's surface. The crystal was warm under his boots, which was impossible. Nothing should be warm out here in the cold of space unless it had active heating systems. Jake found what looked like an entrance, a circular opening that seemed to have been melted through the crystal rather than cut inside. The satellite was even more amazing. The walls glowed with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Jake followed a corridor that spiraled downward toward the center of the structure. His helmet lights were not even needed because the crystal walls provided plenty of illumination. At the center of the satellite, Jake found a chamber that took his breath away. The room was perfectly round, with crystal formations growing from every surface. In the middle of the room was a pillar of pure white crystal that reached from floor to ceiling. Inside the pillar, Jake could see something moving. It looked like smoke at first, swirling patterns of silver and blue that seemed to dance within the crystal. But as Jake watched, he realized it was not smoke at all. It was some kind of energy. Pattern, complex and beautiful, that moved with purpose and intelligence. "Hello," a voice said inside Jake's head, making him jump backward in surprise. Jake looked around the chamber, but he was alone. "Who said that? Where are you?" "I am here, in the crystal before you. I'm sorry if I frightened you. I have been alone for so very long that I had forgotten how to speak gently." The voice was definitely female, with a musical quality that reminded Jake of wind chimes. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. "You're inside." "The crystal?" Jake asked, stepping closer to the pillar. "Yes, I am Lyra of the Nexari. I have been imprisoned here for 217 of your years. My people built this prison to contain me after I was infected with knowledge too dangerous to share." Jake stared at the swirling patterns inside the crystal. Infected with knowledge? That doesn't make sense. My people were logical beings who valued order above all else. When I discovered the truth about the Devourers, the machines that destroyed our enemies, my people decided that this knowledge was too chaotic, too dangerous to exist. They placed me here to keep their perfect order intact. The energy readings on Jake's suit were dropping rapidly. Whatever powered this place was running out fast. "The power is failing," Lyra continued, and Jake could hear sadness in her voice. "When it stops completely, I will cease to exist. My consciousness will dissolve, and the knowledge I carry will die with me." Jake felt a strange pull toward the crystal pillar. "What kind of knowledge?" "Technologies beyond your current understanding. Star maps of the galaxy." The location of worlds rich with resources your people have never seen. But most importantly, I know how to fight the Devourers. They are returning to this sector of space, and when they arrive, they will consume everything in their path. The lights in the chamber were dimming noticeably now. Jake could see that the silver and blue patterns inside the crystal were moving. More slowly, like a person struggling to stay awake. "Is there anything I can do to help you?" Jake asked. There was a long pause before Lyra answered. "There is one possibility, but it would require great trust from you. I could transfer my consciousness into your mind, sharing your neural pathways until we can find a more suitable host. But such a merger has never been attempted between a Nexari and a human. It could kill us both." Jake thought about his empty bank account, his tiny apartment back on Titan Station, and his boring job salvaging scrap metal. Then he looked at the dying alien consciousness in front of him. She had been alone for over 200 years, and she was asking him to save her. "Life, what would happen to me?" he asked. "You would remain yourself, but you would share your mind with me. We would think together, remember together. You would have access to my knowledge, and I would experience the world through your senses. We would become partners in the truest sense." The crystal pillar was barely glowing now. Jake could see that. Lyra's patterns were becoming fainter with each passing second. "If I say yes, how do we do it?" "Place your hand on the crystal and open your mind to me. Think of acceptance, of welcome. I will do the rest." Jake pulled off his glove and pressed his bare hand against the warm crystal surface. The moment his skin touched the crystal, he felt a rush of sensation unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was like being struck by lightning, but instead of pain, there was only a feeling of completeness, as if a part of him that had always been missing was finally falling into place. Images flooded his mind. Star systems he had never seen, technologies that seemed like magic and creatures of incredible beauty and terror. But underneath it all was Lyra herself, her thoughts and memories flowing into his consciousness like water filling an empty vessel. Jake gasped and fell to his knees as the merger completed. The crystal pillar cracked and went dark, its purpose finally fulfilled. But inside Jake's mind, a new voice spoke with wonder and gratitude. "It worked," Lyra whispered in his thoughts. "I can feel your heartbeat, taste the air you breathe. This is remarkable." Jake stood up slowly, amazed at how natural it felt to have another consciousness sharing his mind. It was not invasive or uncomfortable. Instead, it felt like finding a best friend he had never known he was looking for. "Are you okay?" he asked, speaking out loud without thinking. "I am more than okay," Lyra replied, and Jake could feel her joy like sunshine in his mind. "I am alive in a way I never was before." "Thank you, Jake Martinez. You have given me a gift beyond measure." As Jake made his way back to his ship, he realized that his life had just changed in ways he could not even begin to understand. But somehow, that did not scare him. With Lyra's presence warm and comforting in his mind, he felt ready for whatever came next. Jake docked his ship at Titan Station 3 days later, but he felt like a completely different person than when he had left. Having Lyra in his mind was strange at first, but it quickly became as natural as breathing. She was always there, a warm presence that shared his thoughts and feelings. Sometimes he forgot where his thoughts ended and hers began. "The docking procedure is inefficient," Lyra observed as Jake guided the Copper Dawn into its berth. "I could show you a better way." "To calculate the approach angle." Jake smiled as mathematical formulas appeared in his mind, equations that made perfect sense even though he had never learned advanced physics. "Maybe next time." "I don't want to look too different right away." Captain Helen Brooks was waiting for him at the cargo bay, clipboard in hand and her usual stern expression on her face. Helen was a tough woman who had worked her way up from salvage pilot to station commander through sheer determination and skill. "You're 3 days late, Martinez," she said as Jake walked down the cargo ramp. "I was starting to think the debris field got you." "Sorry, Captain. I found something unusual and wanted to make sure I understood what it was before bringing it back." Jake tried to keep his voice casual, but he could feel Lyra studying Helen through his eyes. "She has good instincts," Lyra commented silently. "Her body language suggests she suspects something." Helen looked at the empty cargo hold and frowned. Where's your salvage? You've been out there for 3 weeks? Most of it was worthless scrap. I did find some interesting crystal formations, but they turned out to be decorative rather than functional. Jake hated lying to Helen, but he was not ready to explain about Lyra yet. Helen studied his face carefully. You look different, Martinez. More alert. Have you been taking those stimulant pills again? No, ma'am. Just got some good sleep for once. Jake could feel sweat forming on his forehead. Helen had always been good at reading people, and he was apparently not as good at hiding changes as he had hoped. Report to Dr. Amy Chun for your standard post-mission medical check, Helen said, and try to bring back something valuable next time. The company is not paying you to sightsee. As Jake walked through the station corridors toward the medical bay, Lyra shared her observations about the people they passed. She noticed details that Jake would never have seen, reading body language and facial expressions with incredible accuracy. The man in the blue coveralls has been working with radioactive materials recently, she said as they passed a maintenance worker. I can detect trace elements in his clothing. The woman by the food court is pregnant, probably about 2 months along. She does not know yet herself. How can you tell all that? Jake asked silently. My people evolved to process vast amounts of information quickly. Your human senses provide me with data, and I can analyze it in ways your brain normally could. Not. Dr. Amy Chun was waiting in the medical bay with her usual friendly smile. Amy was one of the few people on the station that Jake actually considered a friend. She was a brilliant scientist who had come to Titan Station to study alien artifacts. That salvage crew's brought back. Jake, good to see you back safely, Amy said, gesturing to the examination table. How was the debris field this time? Quiet, lots of old wrecks, not much worth salvaging. Jake sat on the table and tried to relax as Amy began her standard. Scans. Your neural activity is unusually high, Amy said, frowning at her scanner. Have you been experiencing headaches? Memory problems? Strange dreams? She is very observant, Lyra noted. Her question suggests she has seen unusual neural patterns before. No, nothing like that. I've actually been feeling really good lately. Sleeping better, thinking more clearly. Jake hoped that was enough to satisfy Amy's curiosity. Amy ran a few more scans, her frown deepening. Your brain is showing activity patterns I've never seen before. It's like there are 2 different thought processes running simultaneously. Are you sure you haven't been exposed to any alien technology recently? Jake's heart began to race. Why would you ask that? Because these readings look similar to what we've seen in people who have had contact with certain types of alien neural interfaces. The patterns suggest your brain is processing information in multiple layers at once. Tell her you found some unusual crystals and touch them briefly, Lyra suggested. It is close enough to the truth to be believable. Well, there were these strange crystal formations on one of the wrecks. I had to handle them to see if they were valuable. Maybe that did something? Amy's eyes lit up with scientific interest. Can you describe these crystals? Did you bring any samples back? They were kind of blue and silver with internal patterns that seemed to move, but they crumbled when I tried. To remove pieces for analysis? Jake was getting better at mixing truth with fiction. Fascinating. I've read about similar crystals in some of the older xenobiology reports. They're thought to be related to data storage technologies from a species called the Nexari. Amy made notes on her tablet. Your neural patterns should return to normal in a few days. But if you experience any unusual symptoms, come see me immediately. After leaving the medical bay, Jake went to his small apartment in the residential section of the station. It was not much, just a bedroom, bathroom, and kitchenette, but it was home. He collapsed onto his bed and finally allowed himself to relax. That was nerve-wracking, he said out loud. Dr. Chun is more knowledgeable about my people than I expected, Lyra replied. We will need to be more careful around her. Jake closed his eyes and tried to sort through the flood of new information that Lyra had been sharing with him. Star charts showing systems beyond human exploration. Technical specifications for engines that could travel faster than light. And most disturbing of all, images of the Devourers. The Devourers were not like any enemy humans had ever faced. They were machines, but not in any way that made sense to human thinking. They looked like massive, geometric shapes, covered in thousands of smaller machines that could rebuild and reshape themselves constantly. They consumed entire planets, breaking down matter at the atomic level to fuel their growth and reproduction. "How long do we have before they get here?" Jake asked. "Based on their last known position and typical movement patterns, I estimate they will reach this sector within 6 to 8 months. But they may arrive sooner if they detect signs of advanced civilization." Jake sat up suddenly. "Signs like what?" "Faster than light communications, high-energy particle accelerators, artificial intelligence networks. All things that human civilization is beginning to develop." The weight of responsibility settled on Jake's shoulders like a heavy blanket. He was just a salvage pilot, barely making enough money to pay rent. How was he supposed to help humanity? Prepare for an invasion by planet-eating machines? "We will figure it out together," Lyra said gently, sensing his distress. "You have something my people never had, Jake. You have the ability to act on emotion, to make decisions based on hope, rather than cold logic. That may be exactly what is needed to defeat the Devourers." Over the next few days, Jake tried to return to his normal routine, but everything had changed. He found himself solving technical problems that should have been beyond his abilities. When his ship's navigation computer malfunctioned, he fixed it using techniques that Lyra shared from her memories. When another salvage pilot asked for help with a difficult docking maneuver, Jake provided advice that impressed even the veteran pilots. People began to notice. Helen called him into her office after he successfully repaired a piece of alien technology that had been sitting broken in storage for months. "I don't know what happened to you out there, Martinez, but I like it," she said. "Your technical skills have improved dramatically. I'm promoting you to senior salvage specialist and giving you access to the restricted sectors. Thank you, Captain. I won't let you down. See that you don't, and Martinez? Whatever you found out there that made you better at this job, I hope you'll consider sharing it with the rest of the team." As Jake left Helen's office, he realized that keeping Lyra's secret was going to become impossible. His abilities were changing too rapidly, and people were starting to ask questions he could not answer without lying. "Perhaps it is time to trust someone," Lyra suggested. "Dr. Chun seemed genuinely interested in helping when she thought you had been exposed to alien technology. She might be willing to listen to the truth." Jake thought about Amy's kind face and scientific curiosity. She was one of the few people on the station who might accept the incredible story of an alien consciousness living in his mind. But telling her would change everything, and there would be no going back. "Let me think about it," Jake said as he walked toward his next assignment. "We have time to decide." But even as he said it, Jake knew they were running out of time for everything. The Devourers were coming, and humanity had no idea what was heading their way. 2 weeks later, Jake was working on a damaged communications array when everything went wrong. The device was from an unknown alien species, and the engineering team had been trying to figure out how it worked for months. Jake took one look at it and immediately understood its purpose and function. "The power coupling is reversed," he said without thinking. "And the crystal matrix needs to be rotated 30 degrees clockwise to align with the signal harmonics." The other engineers stared at him in silence. Then Chief Engineer Bill Davis spoke up. "Martinez, that device has been stumping our best people for half a year. How did you know that?" Jake felt panic rising in his chest. He had been so focused on the technical problem that he forgot to hide his new abilities. I just noticed. The pattern was similar to something I saw in the debris field." "What pattern?" Dr. Amy Chin had arrived without Jake noticing. She was studying him with the same intense look she used when examining alien artifacts. "Jake, I need to speak with you privately, right now." Jake followed Amy to her laboratory, his heart pounding. Lyra was unusually quiet in his mind, which somehow made him even more nervous. "Sit down," Amy said, closing the door behind them. "I've been monitoring your brain activity since you came back from your last salvage run. The changes are getting stronger, not weaker like they should if you had simply been exposed to alien technology. She pulled up a holographic display showing brain scans. These are your neural patterns from 2 weeks ago, and these are from yesterday. Jake, there's something living in your brain. She knows, Lyra said softly in his mind. There's no point in hiding it anymore. Jake looked at Amy's concerned face and made a decision that would change everything. You're right, but it's not something dangerous. Her name is Lyra, and she's a friend. Amy's eyes widened. Her? Jake, are you telling me there's an alien consciousness sharing your mind? Yes, she was trapped in a dying crystal satellite, and the only way to save her was to let her merge with my brain. I know how crazy that sounds, but she's not hurting me. She's actually helping me understand things I never could before. Amy sat down heavily in her chair. This is this is incredible. And terrifying. Jake, do you have any idea how dangerous this could be? We don't know anything about alien neurobiology. This entity could be changing your personality, your memories, your entire sense of self. I am not changing him, Lyra said, and Jake repeated her words out loud. I am sharing space in his mind, but Jake remains himself. We are partners, not a parasite and host. Amy leaned forward. She can hear me? Can she speak for herself? Jake nodded. Lyra, Dr. Chun wants to know more about you. Will you talk to her? Of course, Dr. Chun. I am Lyra of the Nexari. I have been sharing Jake's mind for 18 of your days now. I understand your concerns about my presence, but I assure you that I mean no harm to Jake or to your species. Amy grabbed a recording device. This is the most significant xenobiological event in human history. Lyra, can you tell me about your people? What happened to them? Jake felt Lyra's sadness as she began to speak through him. The Nexari were an ancient species that valued logic and order above all else. We lived for millions of your years, spreading across the galaxy and cataloging knowledge. But our greatest discovery was also our doom. What did you discover? We learned about the Devourers, machines created by a dead civilization that consume all organic and artificial life they encounter. When I tried to warn other species about this threat, my people decided that such chaotic knowledge was too dangerous to share. They imprisoned me to preserve their perfect order. Amy was scribbling notes as fast as she could. These Devourers, are they still a threat? They are coming to this sector of space. I estimate they will arrive within 4 to 6 months. When they do, they will systematically destroy every world that shows signs of advanced civilization. The color drained from Amy's face. We have to warn the military, the government, everyone. No, Jake said firmly. Not yet. Who's going to believe us? A salvage pilot claims he has an alien in his head who says planet-eating machines are coming. They'll lock me up and study me like a lab rat. Amy stood up and began pacing. But we can't just do nothing. If what Lyra says is true, humanity needs time to prepare. I have been thinking about this problem, Lyra said through Jake. The Devourers succeed because they attack species that fight them using conventional logic and tactics. But humans are different. You make decisions based on emotion, intuition, and hope. These are concepts the Devourers cannot understand or predict. So you think humanity might actually have a chance against them? Amy asked. Not as you are now. But with the knowledge I carry, combined with human creativity and unpredictability, it might be possible to develop defenses they cannot counter. Over the next hour, Lyra shared technical specifications that made Amy's head spin. Faster than light. Engines that use quantum entanglement, weapons that could disrupt matter at the subatomic level, and shields that could deflect energy by folding space-time itself. This technology is centuries beyond anything we've developed, Amy said, looking overwhelmed. Even with your knowledge, it would take decades to build these devices. Not necessarily, Jake said, feeling Lyra's excitement. Human manufacturing. Techniques are more adaptable than Nexari methods were. You build things to be repaired and modified. My people built things to last forever without change. Your approach might actually be better for rapid development. Amy was quiet for a long moment, staring at her notes. Finally, she looked up at Jake. "We need to tell Captain Brooks. And probably Commander Rick Thompson from the Military Liaison Office. This is too big for the three of us to handle alone." "Are you sure we can trust them?" Jake asked. "Helen Brooks has been fighting for better funding and resources for alien research for years. She understands the importance of this. And Rick Thompson is pragmatic enough to listen to evidence, even if it sounds impossible." That evening, Jake found himself sitting in Captain Brooks' private office with Amy, facing Helen and Commander Thompson across a conference table. The two officials looked skeptical as Amy explained the situation. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Commander Thompson said slowly. "Martinez here has an alien consciousness living in his brain. And this alien claims that machine invaders are coming to destroy humanity in a few months." "That's correct," Jake replied. "I know how it sounds, but I can prove it." Jake proceeded to solve complex mathematical problems that would normally require advanced computers, describe the technical specifications of equipment in the room that he had never seen before, and provide detailed information about alien species that only appeared in classified xenobiology reports. Captain Brooks leaned back in her chair. "Even if I accept that you somehow have access to alien knowledge, how do we know this Lyra entity is telling the truth about these devourers?" "Because she has no reason to lie," Jake said. "She could have kept quiet and lived peacefully in my mind. Instead, she's trying to help humanity prepare for a threat that destroyed her own people." "Show them the star charts," Lyra suggested silently. Jake stood up and walked to the wall display. Without looking at any reference materials, he began drawing a detailed map of the local galaxy, marking star systems, trade routes, and the locations of various alien civilizations. Most of the information matched human astronomical data, but Jake included details about dozens of species that humans had never encountered. "Here," he said, pointing to a section of the map near the edge of known space. "This is where the Devourer fleet was last detected by Nexari scouts. Based on their movement patterns, they should arrive in this system first, then spread out to consume everything in their path." Commander Thompson studied the map carefully. "If this is accurate, they'll hit the outer colonies before reaching Earth. We might have time to evacuate the most distant settlements." "Evacuation will not be enough," Lyra said through Jake. "The Devourers will follow human ships wherever they go. The only solution is to fight them and win. With technology we don't have and can't build in time," Captain Brooks pointed out. "Actually, we might be able to build some of it," Amy said excitedly. "Lyra has been sharing technical specifications with me. Some of the simpler devices could be constructed using modified human technology. We wouldn't get the full performance of original Nexari equipment, but it might be enough to make a difference." Commander Thompson was quiet for several minutes, clearly weighing the incredible claims against the potential consequences of ignoring them. Finally, he spoke. "I'm going to recommend that Titan Station be designated as a classified research facility. Dr. Chun, you'll have unlimited resources to work on these alien technologies. Martinez, you'll be assigned as her primary technical consultant. Captain Brooks, this stays between the four of us until we have something concrete to show the higher-ups." "And if the Devourers arrive before we're ready?" Jake asked. "Then we'll face them with whatever we have," Thompson replied grimly. "But right now, you and Lyra are humanity's best hope for survival." As the meeting ended, Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. He was no longer just a salvage pilot with an alien passenger in his mind. He had become humanity's link to knowledge that might save or doom the entire species. 3 months passed in a blur of activity. Titan Station had been transformed from a simple salvage operation into humanity's most secret research facility. Jake spent his days working with Amy and a team of engineers, trying to turn Lyra's knowledge into working technology. Progress was slow and frustrating, but they were making breakthroughs. The first success came when they managed to build a scanner that could detect Devourer energy signatures from long distances. It was crude compared to what Lyra described from her memories, but it worked. The second breakthrough was a shield generator that could protect small ships from the energy-draining attacks that devourers used to disable their victims. The power requirements are still too high, Amy said, looking at the test results from their latest prototype. We can protect a fighter ship for maybe 10 minutes before the generator burns out. 10 minutes is better than nothing, Jake replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. They had been working for 14 hours straight, and his body was exhausted even though his mind was still sharp thanks to Lyra's help. The humans at the outer colonies have been reporting strange signals, Lyra said suddenly, her voice tense in Jake's mind. I have been monitoring your communication networks. The pattern matches what my people detected before Devourer attacks. Jake sat up straight. How long do we have? Based on the signal strength and frequency, I estimate 2 weeks at most before they reach the first human settlements. Amy looked between Jake and the empty air where he seemed to be listening. What is she saying? The Devourers are closer than we thought. 2 weeks, maybe less. Jake stood up and began pacing. We need to contact Commander Thompson immediately. An hour later, the emergency meeting in Captain Brooks' office had a very different feeling than their last gathering. This time, the threat was real and immediate, and their preparations suddenly seemed pathetically inadequate. How many ships do we have with the new shields? Commander Thompson asked. 12, Amy replied, and only enough power cells to run them for a combined total of about 2 hours of combat. What about weapons that can actually hurt these things? Jake shook his head. We're still months away from building anything that could damage a Devourer ship. The quantum disruptors require materials we don't have, and the space-folding torpedoes need manufacturing techniques we haven't developed yet. So we're basically defenseless, Captain Brooks said grimly. Not completely, Lyra said through Jake. I have been studying your military tactics and ship designs. Humans have something my people never possessed, something that might give you an advantage. What's that? Thompson asked. Creativity in desperate situations. Nexari fought the Devourers with logical, calculated strategies. Every move was planned and predictable. But humans do unexpected things when their backs are against the wall. You improvise, you take risks that no logical being would consider. Thompson leaned forward. Are you suggesting we fight them with reckless tactics? I am suggesting that unpredictability itself might be a weapon. Devourers analyze their enemies and adapt their strategies based on predicted behavior patterns. If humans refuse to follow any pattern, it might confuse their targeting systems long enough to cause real damage. Amy was already pulling up tactical displays. What if we use the shield generators as weapons? If we overload them deliberately, they might create energy feedback that could disrupt Devourer systems. That would destroy our own ships, Thompson pointed out. Maybe not all of them, Jake said, seeing where Amy was going. What if we rig some ships as sacrificial weapons? Volunteer crews could fly them directly into Devourer formations and detonate the overloaded shields at close range. The room fell, silent as everyone considered the implications. They were talking about suicide missions, asking people to die in untested ships using experimental weapons. I'll volunteer for the first mission, Jake said quietly. If anyone's going to test whether this crazy plan works, it should be me. Absolutely not, Amy said immediately. You're too valuable. We need you and Lyra to help coordinate the overall defense. She's right, Captain Brooks agreed. You're not just a pilot anymore, Martinez. You're our link to the only intelligence that understands these enemies. Over the next week, Titan Station became a hive of desperate activity. Volunteer crews were trained on the modified ships. Engineers worked around the clock to build more shield generators, and long-range sensors were positioned throughout the outer system to give early warning of the Devourer approach. Jake barely slept during this time. Lyra shared her energy with him, allowing him to work far longer than any human normally could. But even with her help, he could feel the strain wearing on both of them. Are you sure about this plan? He asked her during a rare, quiet moment. No, Lyra admitted. My people never tried anything like what you are planning. We fought the Devourers with our best technology and our most logical strategies, and we lost. Your approach is completely alien to me, which might be exactly why it could work. The warning came at 0300 hours on a Tuesday. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching the outer colonies. The readings matched everything. Lyra had told them about devourer ships. Jake was awakened by emergency alarms throughout the station. He stumbled to the command center, where Captain Brooks was coordinating with military commanders throughout the system. 3 ships, each one roughly the size of a small moon, she reported as Jake arrived. They're moving toward Colony 7, at about half the speed of light. At their current rate, they'll arrive in 36 hours. Colony 7 has 2 million people, Commander Thompson said grimly. We can't evacuate them in time. Then we fight, Jake said. Send word to all the volunteer crews. It's time to find out if our crazy plan works. The next 30 hours were the longest of Jake's life. Evacuation ships launched from Colony 7, trying to save as many people as possible. Meanwhile, the volunteer crews prepared their modified fighters for what everyone knew was likely a one-way mission. Jake wanted to go with them, but he was needed at Titan Station to help coordinate the defense using Lyra's knowledge of devourer tactics. He watched the tactical displays with growing dread as the massive enemy ships approached the helpless colony. They're not attacking the evacuation ships, Amy observed. Why aren't they stopping the people from escaping? Because escape is impossible, Lyra said sadly through Jake. The Devourers will track the evacuation ships to their destinations and consume those worlds as well. They prefer to let some victims escape so they can follow them to new targets. The first confrontation happened in the space around Colony 7. 12 human fighters, each armed with overloaded shield generators, faced 3 ships that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Jake watched the battle through long range sensors, his heart pounding as the tiny human ships darted between the massive Devourer vessels. Fighter 3 is breaking formation, the communications officer reported. He's making a direct attack run on the lead ship. Jake held his breath as he watched the tactical display. The fighter pilot, a young woman named Lisa Park, drove her ship straight at the center of the nearest Devourer vessel. At the last possible moment, she overloaded her shield generator. The explosion was visible even from Titan Station, a brilliant flash of blue-white light that temporarily blinded the sensors. When the display cleared, there was a massive hole torn through the side of the Devourer ship. It worked, Amy whispered. She actually damaged it. But their celebration was short-lived. The Devourer ship immediately began repairing itself, millions of tiny machines swarming over the damaged area like metal insects. Within minutes, the hole was completely sealed. The damage is too localized, Lyra observed. A single explosion cannot destroy something that large. But multiple simultaneous attacks might overwhelm their repair systems. The remaining human fighters regrouped and tried coordinated attacks, but the Devourers had already adapted. Their defensive systems were now specifically targeting the human ship's shield signatures, making it almost impossible to get close enough for effective strikes. One by one, the volunteer fighters were destroyed. Their sacrifice bought time for the evacuation ships to escape, but Colony 7 itself was doomed. Jake watched in horror as the Devourer ships reached the planet and began the systematic destruction of everything on its surface. 2 million people, Jake said numbly. They're all gone. But the evacuation ships got away, Amy pointed out. Lisa Park and the others saved almost 500,000 lives. And now the Devourers know our tactics, Lyra said grimly. They will. They prepared for shield overload attacks in future battles. We need new strategies and we need them quickly. As reports came in from across the system, the full scope of the disaster became clear. The Devourers were not just attacking random targets. They were systematically working their way through human space, consuming worlds in a pattern designed to drive survivors toward more heavily populated systems. They're hurting us, Jake realized, pushing refugees toward Earth and the other core worlds. When they're done with the outer colonies, they'll have billions of targets concentrated in just a few systems. Commander Thompson looked exhausted. How long before they reach Earth? Jake closed his eyes and felt Lyra calculating distances and travel times. 3 weeks, maybe a month if. The final battle for Earth began on a cold Tuesday morning when long-range sensors detected 57 Devourer ships approaching the solar system. The massive fleet moved like a plague across space, leaving nothing but empty void behind them. Every human settlement in their path had been consumed, their populations either dead or fleeing toward Earth in desperate refugee ships. Jake stood in the command center of Titan Station, now orbiting Earth as humanity's last line of defense. 3 weeks of preparation had transformed the solar system into a maze of weapons, traps, and desperate gambits. But looking at the size of the approaching fleet, Jake wondered if it would be enough. Final count is 130 volunteer. Ships ready for consciousness merger, Dr. Amy Chun reported. We've managed to complete the process with 87 pilots. The rest didn't survive the procedure. Jake felt sick thinking about the volunteers who had died during the experimental merger process. They had volunteered to have copies of Lyra's consciousness implanted in their minds, creating hybrid human-alien pilots who could think and react faster than any normal human. The process was dangerous and painful, with a 40% survival rate. The survivors are reporting enhanced reflexes and tactical thinking, Amy continued. But they're also experiencing personality changes. Some of them don't seem fully human anymore. They are becoming something new, Lyra said through Jake. Neither fully human nor fully Nexari, but a combination of both. It is what my people became millions of years ago when we first merged with artificial intelligence. Captain Helen Brooks studied the tactical displays showing the approaching Devourer fleet. Our hybrid pilots are good, but 57 ships against 87 fighters? The math doesn't look promising. The math was never going to work in our favor, Commander Rick Thompson said grimly. This isn't about winning a fair fight. This is about making the Devourers pay such a high price that they decide Earth isn't worth the cost. Jake felt Lyra stir uneasily in his mind. There is something I have not told you, she said silently. Something my people discovered in their final battle with the Devourers? What is it? Jake asked, both aloud and in his thoughts. The Devourers are not just machines. They were once organic beings like humans, but they chose to abandon emotion and intuition in favor of pure logic. They made themselves into perfect killing machines, but in doing so, they lost the ability to understand concepts like sacrifice, love, and hope. Amy leaned forward. Are you saying they have a weakness? Yes, but exploiting it requires something that goes against every instinct for survival. The Devourers cannot understand why organic beings would choose certain death to protect others. Such decisions appear completely irrational to them, and irrational behavior causes errors in their tactical calculations. Jake understood immediately. You're talking about a sacrifice play. Something so crazy and selfless that their computers can't predict it. Exactly. But it would require not just one person willing to die, but many people working together toward a goal that guarantees their destruction. The room fell silent as everyone considered what Lyra was suggesting. They were already asking people to risk their lives in experimental fighters using untested technology. Now they were talking about asking them to die for certain. I'll do it, Jake said quietly. Whatever this plan requires, I volunteer. No, Amy said immediately. We've been through this before. You're too valuable to lose. Actually, I think Jake might be the only one who can do this, Lyra said. The plan I have in mind requires someone who can coordinate multiple hybrid pilots simultaneously while maintaining a connection to non-hybrid humans. Jake is the only person with a strong enough merger to handle that level of mental coordination. Over the next 6 hours, they developed the most insane battle plan in human history. The hybrid pilots would engage the Devourer fleet in conventional combat while Jake, linked to all of them through Lyra's consciousness, would coordinate a massive synchronized attack on the lead ship. The attack would require every hybrid pilot to overload their ship's power systems simultaneously, while Jake used his connection to Lyra to guide them through the Devourer's defensive systems. The energy release would be enormous, potentially powerful enough to destroy the lead ship completely. but every pilot involved would die in the explosion. It's suicide, Thompson said bluntly. You're asking 87 people to commit suicide, on the chance that it might hurt one enemy ship. It's not suicide if it saves Earth, Jake replied. And it's not just one ship. Lyra thinks that destroying the lead ship will cause a chain reaction that could disable the entire fleet. You think? Amy asked. You don't know for sure? We know that Devourer fleets operate as a single networked intelligence, Lyra explained through Jake. Destroying the primary command ship should cause significant disruption to the others. They will either retreat to regroup, or they will attack individually without coordination. Either outcome gives humanity a better chance. Captain Brooks was studying the tactical projections. Even if this works, we'll lose our entire hybrid pilot program. These people represent months of preparation and training. And if it doesn't work, we lose Earth and 7 billion people. Jake pointed out the debate continued for hours, but in the end, the decision was made by the hybrid pilots themselves. When Jake explained the plan to them, every single one volunteered. Without hesitation. They understood the cost and they were willing to pay it. This is what makes humans different, one of the pilots, a former engineer named Kevin Walsh, said during the final briefing. We don't fight because we think we can win. We fight because some things are worth dying for. The battle began when the Devourer fleet reached the outer edge of the solar system. The massive ships moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Humanity's defenders looked like gnats buzzing around elephants. Jake positioned himself in a specially modified command ship that allowed him to maintain mental contact with all the hybrid pilots. Simultaneously, the sensation was overwhelming, like trying to have 87 conversations at once while solving complex mathematical equations. Only Lyra's presence in his mind made it possible. All pilots begin evasive maneuvers, Jake said into his communications system, but he was also speaking directly into their minds through the consciousness link. Remember, the goal isn't to survive. The goal is to get close enough to make our deaths count. The hybrid pilots moved with inhuman precision, their enhanced reflexes allowing them to dodge Devourer weapons that would have vaporized normal human fighters. But even with their advantages, they were taking casualties. Jake felt each death, like a physical blow as pilot after pilot was destroyed by the overwhelming enemy firepower. 73 pilots remaining, he reported, beginning final approach on the command ship. The lead Devourer vessel was a nightmare of geometric angles. And flowing metal, larger than some moons and bristling with defensive systems. As the human fighters approached, the ship's surface came alive with millions of small defensive drones. This is it, Jake announced. All pilots, prepare for power overload on my mark. He could feel the fear and determination of every pilot through the consciousness link. These people were about to die, and they all knew it. But not one of them hesitated or tried to flee. For Earth, Kevin Walsh said over the communications channel. For humanity, another pilot added. For everyone we couldn't save, said a third. Jake felt tears streaming down his face as he prepared to give the order that would kill 73 brave people. Lyra, are you ready? I am ready, Jake. It has been an honor to share your mind. And to know your species. Mark. Jake shouted. 73 ships simultaneously overloaded their power systems while Jake used Lyra's knowledge to guide the energy release directly into the weak points of the Devourer command ship. The explosion was visible from Earth, a second sun that blazed in space for almost a full minute. When the light faded, the massive Devourer ship was gone, reduced to scattered debris and energy. The remaining 56 ships hung motionless in space, their network coordination severed. It worked, Amy whispered from the command center. They're just floating there. No, Lyra said urgently through Jake. They are adapting. We have perhaps 10 minutes before they re-establish communications and resume their attack. Then we'd better make those 10 minutes count, Commander Thompson said. All remaining forces engage the enemy while they're vulnerable. Earth's regular military forces, along with civilian ships armed with experimental weapons, swarmed the confused Devourer fleet. Without their networked intelligence, the individual ships were still dangerous but no longer invincible. Humanity fought with a desperation and creativity that the logical machines could not counter. The battle lasted 3 more hours, but in the end, humanity won. Not through superior technology or numbers, but through the willingness of ordinary people to make extraordinary sacrifices for something greater than themselves. Jake sat in his command ship afterward, exhausted and grieving for the friends he had lost. In his mind, Lyra was unusually quiet. "Are you all right?" he asked her. "I am different," she admitted. "The merger process, sharing consciousness with so many humans at once, it has changed me. I think and feel in ways my